Hello, and welcome again to UAA, Three-Dimensional Design. My name again is Enzina, and I will be your professor this semester as we navigate through the design elements and principles in three-dimensional art making. This lecture is going to introduce you to your next project, Project 1, Oh, the Masks We Wear. It's also going to start with a brief history and overview of masks to provide a context and to provide some background information to you as you start to conceptualize, to think about and develop your sculptures, your physical masks. Now, this project, Oh, the Masks We Wear, is really an opportunity for you to start to think about visual storytelling. How are you telling a story visually through a physical object? And in this case, it's an object you're wearing on your body or someone is wearing on theirs. That's part of this assignment. It has to be wearable. Now, that story that's being told in this project is your story. It should reflect elements of who you are and or where your interests lie. Can be one or the other. We'll talk more about the details and guidelines of the project in just a little while. But before we do that, we do need to start with a brief history and overview of masks. So I'll next take you through a brief history of masks and also introduce some contemporary approaches to provide you with some context and hopefully some inspiration and some ideas as you start to think about the mask that you're going to create for this project. Now, the history of masks stems from a variety of cultures, religions, and traditions from all over the world. The concept of making this physical object that represents a mask, an alternative identity, has existed across all content and all cultures. And in basic essence, the concept of a mask, this physical entity, this physical representation, is to allow someone to become or represent someone else or something else. Now, this representation could be sociological or physiological, such as an emotion like happiness or sadness. You know, we think about the theater drama mask. Or it could be connected to religious concepts like God or spirits. Masks can also play a role in ritual, in healing, and in storytelling. Now, it's important for us to recognize that masks have been a part of Alaska Native and Indigenous cultures since time immemorial. And in this century, masks are still worn by dancers during ceremonies or by healers during curative rituals. Masks are used for storytelling and reflecting on things unseen. In the past, masks were made chiefly of wood, such as cedar and alder, with appendages of feathers, fur, human hair sometimes, and ivory, or wooden and baleen dangles that accentuated the undulation of the dance. Bird quills might have been used to double as whiskers, porcupine quills used as seal muzzle bristles, and caribou teeth used to represent human teeth. It's also important for us to note and to recognize that with colonization, Alaska Native peoples experienced destructive cultural loss. Not only were peoples displaced or alienated from their ancestral lands and natural resources, but traditional, cultural, and spiritual practices were discouraged or forbidden. Now, recognition of the impact of colonialism and active steps to reverse its negative impacts are critical towards ending the extractive practices that still go on today. Now, as I mentioned, masks have been around for thousands of years and present across all continents. The ancient Egyptians, for example, placed decorated masks with features over the faces of the dead in commemoration and just bespoke honor upon them. In ancient Greek theater, masks were very important in helping the audience understand and follow the play's narrative, taking a very literal role in storytelling. Now, in the Middle Ages, masks in theater and dramatics slightly changed, moving from themes of spirituality and gods to more simpler religious traditions. For example, concepts like good and evil, or ideas and iconographic images like the devil, demons, angels, or dragons. Now, in addition to religion being a major theme in the development of masks, we see masks being used in entertainment, in medicine, and in pagan traditions, as it was believed that they would be able to ward off evil or enable a wearer to propel disease. For example, during the largest plague epidemic in the 14th century, a plague doctor was hired by the local governing bodies and councils to stand on every street corner and help the people suffering from any form of ailment. Each plague doctor wore a very specific protective suit that consisted of a heavy fabric overcoat that was waxed, a mask with glass eye openings, and a cone-shaped nose like a beak to hold scented flowers and straw, which was believed to ward off and prevent illnesses and viruses. And it would protect the plague doctor from catching anything from their patients. And then during the 15th century, and towards another type of transition for the mask, was the emergence of the mask being used in theater and opera. Now, during the Renaissance, there was a theatrical-based entertainment that spread through Italy, France, Germany, and then moved on to England in the late 18th century. This new type of theater consisted predominantly of the genres comedy and tragedy. A form of theater called commedia dell'arte was derived, in which masked mime artists became extremely popular. Now, in current times, you will see masks reminiscent of these Middle Age varieties during the Venice Carnevale, an annual celebration that dates back to 1094, and that offers attendees an escape from the everyday through the anonymity of a mask and costumes. Again, this hiding of identity, this presenting as something or someone else. Now, in Japan, a different type of mask theater was being established. This was called the no theater, meaning accomplishment or performance. Now, although no theater became prominent in the 14th century, the style was developed from performances originating in the 10th and 11th centuries. Beauty, youth, jealousy or evil, old age or feebleness were often different representations of masks that you would see in the different no performances. Present day, we see a shift in our interpretation, use, and understanding of masks, especially in pop culture and in the entertainment industry. Masks have been used in many horror films to conceal the identities of the killer. Notable examples of this include Jason of the Friday the 13th series, Ghostface of Scream, and Michael Myers of the Halloween series. So we see a shift from the mask being used to transform into someone else, to something else, to communicate a feeling, emotion, a belief system, a spirituality, to be used in ritual, in dance, in healing, to be used as a protective element, or to bring comfort to others. Now we see the mask being used to conceal identity, to hide what is beneath the surface. We also see a lot of contemporary artists continuing to play with the concepts of masks as an extension of the body. Now, a mask such as this by Drew Michael could be used as an expression of the self and identity. As Drew Michael talks about, this mask, Sovereign Identity, was a piece to show how we connect to place, in how it's ritualized to honor the spirit of place, animals, and the humanity we all are aware of close to birth. They can also be used as an elaborate ornamentation highlighting craft and art form, such as these masks developed by James Mary. And then we think about our knowing of masks and how that has shifted over the last few years, and predominantly because of COVID-19 and the pandemic. Now, masks have existed for thousands of years across all continents, and contemporary artists continue to be inspired by this concept of a material object that becomes a mask, that becomes an element that allows someone to transform. But what we know of masks has really been influenced by the medical masks of the last few years. Now, modern day cloth masks and the ones we saw being sewed during the pandemic, and these types of face coverings have been around for about 2,000 years. They're not new. They emerged in the medical field in the early 1900s. They were first cloth before developing into a disposable paper masks and more advanced masks that were used broadly by the public during the Spanish flu of 1918. And now over the last few years, as I mentioned, we have seen a lot of artists reinterpret the mask and reinterpret specifically these medical type masks that were being used during the pandemic. Now, these masks can speak to a lot of different things and can represent a lot of different emotions, identities, feelings, physiological states of being, sociological states of being. They may speak to isolation or absurdity. They might reflect on the challenges of the time. They might reflect culture or heritage or identity. We also saw and continue to see a lot of Indigenous artists like Alaska's Lily Hope, a Tlingit weaver who made these protector masks, these woven protector masks during the pandemic. And Crystal Worrell, who is a Tlingit and Athabascan artist who's indigenizing masks to honor and reflect their culture and land. Here, Crystal has used seal skin to make a mask. So as you think about your Oh, the Masks We Wear project, I want you to reflect on what a mask is. It can be lots of things. It can be used to disguise, to conceal, to reveal, to heal, to hide, to cover, to honor. It could be a physical enhancement. It could be an element of protection. It could be a piece of entertainment. You know, we hear expressions all the time. They were putting a brave face on. That's a form of masking. People mask their personalities. People show up as someone else. These are all physical, psychological ways of masking. How do we extend that physically to an object? Think about what masking means to you, how masking has shown up in your life, in your friend circles, in your family, as you start to conceptualize what your project will be. So again, project one, Oh, the Masks We Wear. This is a project that captures who you are. What is your identity? Who are you as a person, as an artist, as a maker? And if that doesn't feel like the right direction for you to go in, how can you use your mask to present where your artistic interests lay? Now, the mask can be functional, right? It can be a worn mask that functions as a mask, or it could be non-functional. Now it says here that it has to cover at least your nose and mouth. I've changed that. It just needs to cover half of your face. So if you want to cover the top part of your face, that's fine, or the bottom part. But this mask has to be prominent enough to cover at least half of your face. Can it cover your whole face? Sure. Can it cover your whole head? Sure. Can it cover parts of your body? I'm okay with that as long as it's still covering at least half of your face. It also has to be wearable. So it can't be held up to your face. It needs to be independently worn. So worn atop, attached to, or suspended. It needs to be freestanding on your face. It needs to be wearable. It cannot be held or propped up. It needs to be fully hands-free wearable. So the guidelines, and again, these are going to be in Blackboard, and I really want you to print it out, download it, make sure you're reading through that assignment sheet really thoroughly to make sure you don't miss any points for not following directions. So you're going to create one mask that's worn on your body. If you're not comfortable wearing it and you want someone else to model it for you, that is just fine. So again, the mask must cover at least half of your face. It can be made of any material. It can be any size as long as it covers half of your face. And it must capture who you are or what you're interested in. And again, it can be functional. It can work as a mask, a medical mask, or it could be non-functional. It could be decorative, such as this example we see here. Now, when you're submitting your work on Blackboard, you need to photograph the mask being worn by yourself or by a model, and you need to photograph it on its own. I want a few photos of each. This is a three-dimensional object. I want to see the front. I want to see the back, right? Just because it's worn doesn't mean you ignore what's on the inside. It needs to be finished all the way around. It's fully three-dimensional. And I want to see images of that. I want different angles from front, from back, from the sides. If there's a kinetic component, if there's elements that move, you're also welcome to submit a video. Now, these masks have to be completely original, so they cannot be attached to any sort of pre-existing mask. You can't go Walgreens, pick up a mask, and then attach stuff to it. Or you can't use a mask that you get from Home Depot and work around it. This needs to be made from scratch, all original design, all originally made. You can use those masks as a template to create a piece from, to create an initial piece from, if that's your pattern, but you cannot use that as a base or armature. And the masks also need to be culturally appropriate. So do not use elements, designs, symbols, or techniques from a culture that is not your own and you are identifying it as your own. I do have a resource on cultural appropriation and some definitions around that in Blackboard, and I really encourage you to use that. We want to make sure that we're being mindful and responsible stewards of other cultures that are not our own. So we are not claiming identities and claiming spiritualities or sacred practices that do not belong to us. So some questions I want you to reflect on as you're thinking about what type of mask you're going to make. What aspects of your identity would you like to present outwardly? These can be reflective of your biography or your ancestry. They can be your experiences or your accomplishments. They can be your hopes or your fears. Also think about what aspects of your identity do you prefer not to present outwardly? That could be a conversation of who you are as well. Also think about what you are trying to communicate through this mask. I've shown you lots of different examples of artists who are working contemporarily and artists who and masks throughout time that all communicate something different. What are you trying to communicate in this mask? And then what medium will you use and how does it reflect or relate to the concept? Now, the due dates for this are on Blackboard. So please, again, make sure that you're following along on Blackboard. You get this in on time. And 1 week after it's due, you will be required to go on Flickr and provide feedback on your classmates' works. Now, you don't have to do feedback on everybody, but I like you to provide feedback on at least 75%, and I'll give you a target number as we get closer to this deadline. So you're gonna, again, upload images of your mask worn on a body, yours or someone else, on a stand, on a table, so you can show lots of different angles of it. And please don't use filters or AI to alter or adjust the final image of your mask. And that's it. So please always reach out to me if you have questions. It's vjmarrari@alaska.edu. We won't be having concept sketches for these, so you're really going to be on your own to develop this. And I really want to use this opportunity to think about your conceptual development and visual storytelling. And it'll help give me a foundation of where you're starting so I know where you're going and how you progress this semester. But if you need any help along the way, if you want to bounce ideas off of me, if you need some suggestions or advice for construction, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. We'll set up a Zoom and work with each other that way. So I wish you the best of luck this first week. Please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and reach out to me if you need any help with Project 1, Oh, the Masks We Wear. Thank you so much.